San Diego police records used to report the punishment for curfew arrests, often a diversion program, sometimes juvenile hall. But beginning in 2019, their arrest records started listing null instead. By that time, most large cities in California had stopped enforcing curfew. When I asked the police department why they changed how they were punishing curfew, they did not respond. I reported a story about curfew in September, and Jill Edwards' fam heard it on the radio, while, she says, she was driving her son to his interview for a juvenile diversion program for being out after curfew. Fam reached out to me. I visited her at her home in the Allied Gardens neighborhood.
I'd heard about curfew laws, but I did not realize that there was a punishment involved with it.
Was that surprising to you?
Absolutely, especially with this level of punishment. I think it's absurd.
Police stopped her 15-year-old son, who was a passenger in a car out past 10 p.m. His father is Vietnamese, and fam says the other boys in the car were not white. San Diego police overwhelmingly arrest Black and Latino youth for curfew. In 2022, they made up more than 3/4 of the arrests. SDPD did not respond to questions regarding curfew punishment records. Fam's son was sentenced to a diversion program in order to keep the arrest off his record. He has to attend 5 workshops on topics like decision-making and values, complete 10 hours of community service, and handwrite a 600-word essay. Fam says if he doesn't complete those requirements within 3 months, he can be referred back to the police department for a misdemeanor. And she says she will be issued an arrest warrant if she fails to appear in court.
How does that feel as a...
Horrifying. I think that the police are there to protect and I would not think that this level of punishment is appropriate for a 15-year-old child who is out after 10 p.m.
What do you think would be appropriate, or do you think it should be the police's role at all?
I think the police, if they find some, kids on the street and they say, okay, it's a bit late, I'll call your parents come and pick you up.
The diversion program is in City Heights, and Fam and her husband both work full-time. She says organizing transportation is a burden. She thinks of the other families who may not have a car or may not be able to navigate the paperwork as easily. She says this has been her introduction to what it's like to grow up in America.
When I was in Queensland in the 1980s, we were considered to be living under a police state. So this may have been, I think this was even worse than what we would have experienced.
That's one issue.
Mike Males, senior researcher for the Center on Juvenile and Criminal Justice, calls curfew a very American policy and antiquated.
I don't know why San Diego is creating a crime here.
Research overwhelmingly shows curfew is not effective at reducing crime, and Males could not think of another city in California that still enforces it. In fact, he says,
there's no particular approach to juveniles once they're arrested that's effective. The truth is, you really just don't want to be arresting people in the first place. That creates a criminal record. It creates a lot of antagonism.
Males also takes issue that SDPD records no longer show the punishments for curfew arrests.
They shouldn't be getting away with just saying, we're not going to report what we're doing with them.
When I first reached out to Males, he didn't know that San Diego was still enforcing curfew. The state's online records, which are meant to provide transparency, list 0 curfew arrests for San Diego in 2021 and 2022. Despite the hundreds of arrests SDPD recorded. Fam says this experience has shifted how she and her son view the police.
I would avoid contact with the police because I'm really worried that if something this minor can lead to that level of punishment, imagine if you did actually do something wrong, then it would be, catastrophic to a 15-year-old child to be in so much trouble. And it would be hard to get out of that system, I believe.
I have repeatedly asked the police department about this lack of transparency and incomplete records. They have not provided any answers. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.